Good morning, I'm Tommy Lewicki. Thanks for coming out. I'm going to tell you a little bit about Pennsylvania's working families and the problems with child care and the problems that this environment, this current environment has created for those citizens. While President Bush continues to give away billions in tax cuts to the super rich, working families are having a harder and harder time getting by. Americans share the belief that equal opportunity and hard work should allow people to get ahead and provide for their families. But Bush's reckless tax breaks and irresponsible budget cuts have created such extreme levels of inequality that the same rules no longer apply, and the children of working families are paying the highest price. In child care, by the administration's own calculation, budget cuts have already meant that 150,000 fewer children nationwide were in subsidized care in 2006 than in 2000. Now the administration is threatening cuts that would deprive another 300,000 children of the opportunity for a good start by 2010. The Child Care and Development Block Grant provides funds to the states. They can be used to assist low-income families with the high cost of child care. After all, what good is a job when you have to spend all the money from your job to take care of your children? It doesn't give you much of an incentive to go to work, does it? The president's child care cuts would amount to a loss of $14 million in Pennsylvania over the next 5 years. In Pennsylvania, 62% of the children under age 6 live with working parents, and child care funding is particularly important for these parents and for those who wish to move on from welfare to work. The president's cuts will make it difficult, a lot more difficult for working parents in Pennsylvania to keep their jobs and make that transition and become productive members of society in terms of paying taxes and being a part of at least the lower class. The cost of restoring Pennsylvania child care funding, which is $15.1 million, is equivalent to about 1 hour and 6 minutes of spending on the war in Iraq. 1 hour and 6 minutes. $15.1 million. Now on to job training. This is an issue that's really important, especially in areas such as northeastern Pennsylvania that have lost lots of manufacturing jobs over the years. Lots of jobs that had good benefits where workers retired from those jobs, retired to pensions. Well, most of those jobs, as we all know, are gone. History, never to return, gone to China, Mexico, other countries, even other states. So vocational training programs are critical to these individuals and working families because without those programs, these folks can't learn the skills to take other jobs within the economy and continue to work. President Bush's budget would cut $43.8 million from Pennsylvania's 2004 vocation education funding level that's adjusted for inflation. That's from 3 years ago. The House Education Funding Bill for 2008, on the other hand, would reject the cuts and restore more than $600 million to the Career and Technical Education Title I state grants. So the House of Representatives is now trying to do something about it, but you can count on this president to do everything he can to stop it. Other programs that would fail to meet the current needs as a result of a Bush veto include adult job training, youth job training, and employment services. The president's insistence that people work their way out of poverty rings false when he stands in their way as they attempt to obtain the necessary skills to do so. The cost of restoring Pennsylvania job training funds, $43.8 million, is equivalent to about 3 hours and 12 minutes of the war in Iraq. Working families need help now. Imagine the difference that could be made for Pennsylvania families and communities if we devoted a tiny fraction of the money we're spending in Iraq, just a little bit of that money, to these priorities for children and working families. While Congress is trying to address these priorities, the president's veto threat is a rejection of the needs of America's children and working families. Not only is President Bush shortchanging critical priorities in favor of funding the endless Iraq war, the Bush administration continues cutting taxes for the very wealthy, resulting in alarming levels of wealth and income equality. In our state, only 0.2% of the population received that quote-unquote 119,600 tax cut in 2007. Most of us, we know what we got in tax cuts, very, very little. The programs described above have suffered, and they'll lose even more important funding if he continues on his reckless course. We've seen what's happened to our income. We've seen what's happened to the cost of living. We've seen what's happened to our property taxes as our local municipalities have struggled just to keep up with the needs to educate our children, to fix our roads, to fix our infrastructure, and continue whatever they can do. And they have taken an unfair share of the burden of those expenses.